Hello, Luke here. In today's demo, we'll be covering how to create an Ansible inventory file. And this is part of our Getting Started with Ansible blog series over at automatesql.com. I'll put a link down in the description to the post. So I am in our Ansible control node, which is a Windows Server 2022 machine running Windows Subsystem for Linux. See the previous videos in this playlist if you'd like to know more about how to set up the control node. So we'll start by just opening up Visual Studio Code. And as you see in the lower left-hand corner, opening remote, and it's connecting to our Ubuntu instance, which is running in WSL. So as you can see, it's went ahead and opened our Getting Started folder that we built in previous videos, and the file that we're going to be focusing on is the host.ini file. And I've got two groups defined in the inventory. One is Windows servers, and the next one is Linux servers. So I've got SRV2 and SRV3. Both of these are Windows servers. These are the IP addresses. You don't necessarily have to have the IP addresses if you're on a network that has DNS services running. In our case, we haven't built that just yet in the lab environment. I do have one Red Hat Enterprise Linux server running. So for each one of these, there's a few variables that are defined. So for the Windows servers group, we've got our variables defined here. We're going to be connecting over WinRM, and then we're going to ignore the cert validation because we are using a self-signed certificate. We're going to be connecting over port 5986, and we're using the NTLM instead of Kerberos. And then these are our timeout settings. For Linux, anything that's in any servers or any managed nodes that are in the Linux servers group, we're going to be using SSH to connect. So the next step, once you have your inventory file defined, go ahead and save it. You can do this in a text editor if you don't have Visual Studio Code installed. I just find it much easier working with these files and playbooks with VS Code. So I'm going to go ahead. I've already opened the terminal window, but if you haven't done so and you're using VS Code, you can click Terminal here and then choose New Terminal. And then the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and change my directory to the Getting Started directory. And then we're going to run a couple of Ansible ad hoc commands. The first one being ansible-inventory. We're just going to use it to validate that this is the syntax used in the inventory file is readable by Ansible. So we're going to be using Ansible-inventory, passing in the I parameter, which is inventory, and then telling it the host.ini file is our inventory file, and then we're going to list out all the nodes that's inside of the inventory file by using list. So we can see that here's our groups. Linux servers, there's one host called RHEL1. And then in our Windows servers, we've got two hosts, SRV2 and SRV3. These are the parameters going to be passed to Ansible whenever Ansible attempts to connect with the modules. And we'll be using win_ping to validate that we can connect to our Windows servers, and then we'll just be using the ping module to connect over SSH to our Linux host. So we can see that we didn't get any errors using that Ansible inventory. So we're going to go ahead and move forward and try to just do another ad hoc command using Ansible. We're going to pass in the same host.ini file. We're going to be using the ping module, and this is the group that we want to try to connect to. the username is Packer, and then we're going to be prompted for that password by using the ask-pass parameter. Go ahead and enter the password, and it failed because this is the first time we've connected that machine, and by default, this error will be presented. It says using a SSH password instead of a key is not possible because host key checking is enabled and SSH pass does not support this. We can go ahead and just add this fingerprint to our known host files by going ahead and just trying to SSH and connect to that machine. And there we're presented with, are you sure you want to continue connecting? And yes. We're going to select yes, and then we're going to go ahead and, well, actually, you've got to spell out yes. And as you can see, it says permanently added, and we are connected to our Red Hat Enterprise Linux server after we provide the password. Now we're connected, I'm going to go ahead and exit. Now we're back on our Ubuntu instance or server, and I'm just going to run that Ansible command again. I left that error in there just so that if you do encounter that, that's a quick workaround in your lab to go ahead and add the fingerprint. So now we're going to run this command again, Ansible, and then we're going to use the ping module. Provide the password. And if we've built our inventory file correctly, we should get a success message, and we did. And you can see changed. We didn't change anything. We'll get into more information around what these mean later when we get into building our playbooks. So success was what we were looking for. Now let's try connecting to our Linux or our Windows servers. And for that, we'll use the Win ping module. So again, we're using Ansible, passing in the host.ini inventory file. The module is WinPing. We're passing in the Windows Server group, which is defined here. Username is administrator, and again, we're going to be prompted for the password. And there we have it. We have 2 success messages. It was able to connect to both servers. So that concludes the demo. It's pretty quick to get through your first inventory file. If you do want more information, be sure to check out the blog post or any of the other posts in this series. I do plan to release a video each week and another blog post in this series. So check back often. Go ahead and subscribe if you'd like. And yeah, I'll catch you next time. Thanks.